Jamie Pollard, Director of Athletics at Iowa State, with us with Paul and Craig. David Smoak on 365 Sports. Thank you, Jamie. I know your schedule is packed, and it's about to even be more, I guess, condensed because of the men's basketball tournament that's coming up pretty soon. What is that like? How much time is that with you and the honor to be a part of that?
Oh, it is an honor, and this will be my fifth and last year doing it. I say I've had a 5-year sentence and I'm up for parole. So I'll be out in a little over 6 weeks, but it's a much bigger commitment than I ever thought because it's year round. It's well documented what we do here during the selection and during the actual tournament, but it's also administering the tournament throughout the year, policies, procedures, officials, site selection, site evaluation. So there's a lot that goes into it, but the most intense part starts next Tuesday. And basically from next Tuesday until about April 11th, you're on sabbatical, essentially being a committee member.
Jamie, do you feel like that there is more scrutiny on the college football playoff committee than there is for what you do with the men's tournament?
Well, I can speak through the eyes of several of my colleagues that have done both. And they would say the basketball committee is far more challenging because you're dealing with, 68 teams, not 4. Now, I do believe in the new format, and, Mac, I believe, is going to be part of it, is, the college football playoff committee is going to have their work cut out for them. Because picking, it isn't just 4, it's going to be 12. It's harder to say the difference between 12 and 13 than it is 4 and 5. It also is going to be really hard to decide who's 8 and who's 9 because that's going to dictate who goes on the road and plays a first-round playoff game at home versus on the road. So I think their work is going to get a little more scrutinized going forward in the 12-team format than it has in the past.
Well, let's jump into that new format and the new format that apparently is coming after this one before we've even seen it. In one of the proposals, it's out there, Jamie, that the Big Ten and the SEC would get the first round buys automatically. Where does that stand for you personally, and where do you think the other conferences that could have better teams than those two in any given year would stand on that issue?
Quite frankly, I'm probably not equipped to even respond to that because I'm not in the room. So, the only information I really have on all of that is what's been reported by the media, which, quite frankly, isn't coming from the people in the room. So I don't really have a comment on that. I mean, my world has been the basketball committee and, I'm watching from afar and, at some point in time, it'll get decided what is going to happen in, after these next 2 years of the college football playoff committee. And that's when I'll probably find out about it.
Do you think that at least they should do 12 before they start worrying about 14, even though there's TV deals involved?
Well, I also, I think when you're not in the room, you jump to conclusions about why certain things might be the way they are. And there might be a really good reason that they are talking about 14. And it's not that they're just trying to grow it. They're just trying to figure out how to deal with it, based on what they're talking about in the room. So I don't think we should jump to conclusions.
Jamie, when it goes back to the basketball tournament, what has changed the most in selecting the 68-team tournament? The quad ones obviously are huge. The quads of 1, 2, 3, and 4, your record, et cetera. Is there anything else that has changed since your first year that help maybe decide 3, 4 teams compared to 5 or 10 teams?
I don't know if anything's changed that drastically during my time. I will say we all joke and say, I don't know how they did it, back in the day when they did it all manually because, there is so much information we have access to and so many things you're comparing. And, the committee is 12, so you've got 12 different sets of eyes that we don't all view things the same. What may matter to me maybe doesn't matter to somebody else. That's what makes it really a neat process. Otherwise, a computer could just spit it out. But there is a human element of analyzing all this information that the computers, all prepare for us, whether it's, you pick the service, everybody's got their, whether it's Ken Palm, BPI, KPI, strength of record, WOB, net, there's so many different things. And then each committee member, may value road wins, may value strength of schedule, may value non-conference strength of schedule, may value Q1 wins. There's just so many different things that trip anyone's trigger. And in the end, it's 12 people voting, and you got to have the majority.
Jamie, when you get down into it, you get down to that end of, okay, we've got to get these last four teams situated, or there's these bubble things. Is that a little bit gut-wrenching when you have to look at somebody's resume and say, man, we just can't? To me, it would kill me.
It's hard. First of all, what the committee does, putting the teams into the tournament is one thing. And quite frankly, we put in probably on average, maybe about, there's 31 automatics, right? So there's 37 other spots, right? So we're not really putting 68 teams in, we're putting 37 in. And I would contest certainly the first 24, but probably the first 30, my grandma could get. I'm not saying the order, I'm just saying getting the teams in. Then it becomes probably the last 4 or 5 that you put in, and the last 4 or 5 that don't get in. That gets really hard. And on Saturday night, it'll be really late, and typically there'll be like 2 or 3 spots left, and there's, 8 teams you got to choose from. And you feel like your head's going to explode because you can vote it 8 times and probably justify voting for somebody different every single time. But you got to vote for 3 teams, and you can't vote for 5 teams. And that's how, those last several teams get put in. But then after you've done that, then we have to seed from 1 to 68. And you start and you go through, you compare 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, all the way down to 68. And we probably do that 6 to 8 times over the last 48 hours. And, by the time you've done all that, I've told people I feel really good that we've got the most deserving teams and we have them in the right order, but it's gut-wrenching doing that.
Do you have access to yourself from other programs, coaches, analysts? Are they allowed to contact you during that sabbatical?
Well, anybody can reach out to you. Whether you listen to them or not is a whole other thing. So people will tend to try to lobby you, or I don't even know if lobby is the right word. I've tried to be helpful as a committee member and explain things. And so, we get assigned conferences. So each of us get about 5 or 6 conferences, and you meet with those conference representatives on a systematic basis throughout the season. And, I've used it to try to just educate them on what I've seen over my 5 years and have them help me. I'm not an advocate for them, but what I'm responsible for is being the voice into the other 12 for those 5 conferences. And so what I try to do is help them arm me with the necessary data to make sure I'm helping position their teams the most accurately, so that, whether it's this player wasn't, available for certain games, was injured, just things that other committee members might not readily know because they're not assigned to those 5 conferences. And, that's what I've heard and seen from, my colleagues that try to reach out to you.
Jamie, what is the biggest complaint? Do you get more complaints about, or not complaints, or questions from people who maybe don't make the tournament or on the bubble about why, or are they more upset about why am I a 6 seed and not a 4 seed?
From the fan standpoint, you probably hear more about I didn't get in. Mm-hmm. From coaches, it's more about why did I get seated where I got seated, and probably the biggest myth buster that anybody that's on the committee would tell you is we don't determine the matchup. So all the people that, think, okay, Fred Hoiberg in Nebraska's got to play TJ Otzelberger in Iowa State, right? Because they coach together. If that happens, it is totally happenstance, and it was done by the computer, not by us. And it would mean that, both teams would need to be seated in a way that they can meet. And then, because the computer, we go 1 to 68. So the computer starts with number 1 and they get the closest spot. And number 2 gets the next closest spot. And it just goes through the S curve that way. And some things get knocked out of order because if there's 2 teams from the same area, they both can't go to the same spot. So then, maybe that changes the number that they were seated at. But the computer goes through and does all that. We don't do it. So when the brackets come out and people think it was, a bunch of old guys in a room smoking cigars, figuring out how they can make this coach have to play that coach, that does not happen. I can absolutely tell you that. That does not happen.
I did not know that. That's interesting and great thing to learn. You mentioned TJ Otzelberger, Iowa State, highly ranked. Obviously, Houston, number 1. Baylor with a win against KU. They're right outside the top 10. When they talk Big 12, do you have to recuse yourself, or is it only if they talk Iowa State?
Because I'm the athletics director at Iowa State, I have to leave the room when any time Iowa State's going to be discussed or compared against. I can be in the room for the other Big 12 member schools, but I can only state fact. I can't state opinion.
You don't George Costanza and leave a running tape recorder in there, do you? No. Is that a weird thing to do, to be outside and then have to go back in? And then, because they're like, hey, we're going to talk about you, go outside. And then they say, okay, Iowa State 3 seed. And then you just have to be like, all right. Like, is that how it goes?
Yeah. 3 years ago, we started off as an 8 seed and got scrubbed down to an 11 seed. So I kept leaving the room, and every time I left the room, we fell, and my blood pressure was going up by the second, right? But that year, hey, we fell to 11, and and I didn't agree with it, but hey, that was the will of the committee. But as it turned out, as an 11 seed, we made the Sweet 16. So we ended up playing a couple teams that didn't probably appreciate that Iowa State was an 11 that year. So that happens, and so that's why it's really important for the committee to get it right. I mean, there's some teams this year that are going to be hard to, Gonzaga, Kentucky, teams that, where do we put them? Florida Atlantic last year, where do you put them? Because their resume is just so drastically different than the other teams they're being compared to. And it's really important that you get it, you try to get it right, because if you overseed them, that's not fair to somebody. And if you underseed them, it's not fair to somebody.
So next Tuesday, you basically go into hibernation in a way. Do you stay in that location? Do you fly back to Ames? How does that work in between? Right. Is it just one long, lengthy, you're there?
So we all get assigned sites and predetermined sites, and you can get bumped from your site depending if your team gets sent there and it's a conflict. But in essence, we're in Indy from Tuesday to Sunday, and then we all go out. I'll just use my schedule. I'm going to be in Indy from Tuesday to Sunday, and then I am signed to Omaha. So I have to be in Omaha on Tuesday after selection, and I'll be in Omaha from Tuesday to Saturday. I'll come home on Sunday, but then I leave for Los Angeles on Monday, and I'll be in LA for that entire next week at that Sweet 16 site. And then I'll come back I actually get back 2 days because LA is a Thursday, Saturday site. So I'll get an extra day off before I have to report to Phoenix on that following Wednesday for the Final Four.
Okay, so then
you're in Phoenix from Wednesday to Tuesday.
All right, I want to go back to one thing, and I know you say you're not in the room, and we know that there are some Big 12 representatives inside the college football playoff room, and the proposals are just being floated out by media members on what could be, whether it's a first-round bye for the SEC and the Big Ten or automatic qualifiers. Do you have the faith in Brett Yormark as commissioner with what he's already done in a short amount of time, that if he felt like the Big 12 was on the wrong side of any kind of proposal, that he would speak up for the entire conference, and would you expect him to?
Yes and yes. I mean, he's a big, he's representing the Big 12, and I don't, whether it was him or anybody else, whether it was Commissioner Bowlesby or, back in the day, or if it was the other commissioners in the other leagues today. I mean, yeah, they're going to represent their league, but again, it's like the basketball committee. In the end, it's, there's a governance structure and there's a vote, and you don't always get what you want. And so that potentially could happen in this scenario, just like, I didn't like 2-3 years ago, we were an 11th seed. I didn't get what I wanted, and so that's just part of shared governance. And so you do, you voice your opinion, but you also have to be mature enough to understand that you don't always get exactly what you want.
Are you concerned at all about any kind of future that would only include 2 big conferences and the Big 12 would yet again be fighting for their lives?
I'm not spending a lot of time talking about that or thinking about that. That's probably a better way to say it than talking about it. I'm not saying that won't happen sometime in the future. I mean, who would have ever thought the Pac-12 would go away as fast as they did, right? So anybody that wants to just kind of be a stick in the mud and believe nothing's ever going to change is probably going to be highly disappointed. That being said, I'm not a doomsday person. I'm not a pessimist. It's, tell me what the facts are, and then I'm going to figure out how to try to make it work as best I can for the people that are employing me to do what I do. And so, Iowa State will continue to do what it does, and the Big 12 will continue to do what it does until someone tells us it's not.
Do you look forward to, June 1st to July 1st, the 4 incoming schools and the breath of fresh air that the conference moves forward because of what's happened over the last couple of summers?
Yeah, they're already in the room. They just can't vote, but their voices are in the room. So I already feel like that is there. And, our basketball league, my gosh, I mean, how can it get harder? But it's going to get harder by adding, Arizona and Utah and Colorado, in Arizona State. It's going to be, wow. It's a gauntlet today. I think we're all going to be in pins and needles waiting for that schedule to come out and find out who our 2 plays are and who our 5-1 plays are, and hope that, if you got a 1 play against KU or Arizona, that it's in Waco or in Ames.
Right. No.
Because, the schedule could get really hard. Like this year, the Iowa State has there's a calculation that gets done, and we have the toughest Big 12 basketball schedule this current year of the 14 of us, and that was just happenstance.
Yep.
Right. And so part of that, you're going to get that schedule and go, oh my gosh, I got to go do this and do that. So, but that's what makes the Big 12 basketball really exciting. And I think football is going to be just as exciting, because I don't think anybody can claim today that, they got a leg up on anybody. I think it's going to be wide open.
If you don't mind, Jamie, last question. The Big 12 has faced a lot. You have been a part of that, fighting for the conference and other ADs around the Big 12, whether now the new ones or about to be new ones. How would you describe the resiliency of the conference, and even really just over the last couple of 2.5 years?
Oh, it's amazing. Cats have 9 lives. The Big 12 had, 5 or 6 during my time. The obituary's been written many a time, and we always seem to come out the other side even stronger. And I feel right now, with adding the 8 schools, let's call it like it is. We brought 4 in, but we're bringing another 4 in next year. And, I believe we're a much stronger conference than we've ever been. Our industry has changed, though, at the same time. And, it's like a moving target. But I feel like the fabric of the membership of the Big 12 going forward is as strong and as cohesive as it's ever been. And to me, that's really exciting as somebody that's been in it for 19 years.
Good luck with what you have in front of you. It always is a pleasure. Thanks to Nick Jost, but thank you, Jamie Pollard, for your time whenever we get it from you on 365 Sports, and good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Jamie Pollard, Director of Athletics at Iowa State. He's involved in the men's basketball tournament as his 5th year, his last year to be a part of the committee. He really did